Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you today. Just wanted to kick this off. I'm the marketing director for Private Prep and wanted to introduce Rachel Elmer, which we are so excited to have as our director of college admissions. She's going to walk you through some of the questions you submitted, as well as some best tips for college essays. So I'm going to let her take it from here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Becky, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm really excited to talk about college essays. They're my absolute favorite part of this process. I never get tired of them. So I'm really excited to talk about them with all of you tonight, and I'm glad you were able to take 30 minutes out of a challenging week to be here with us. As Becky said, I'm going to go through some of the questions that were submitted in my presentation to you. As I talk, please feel free to submit additional follow-up questions or just questions that occur to you as we go, using either the chat function or the Q&A function. Both of those work and will come to us, and we'll try to answer those real time as we go. We really want to answer your questions and your acute needs, so please don't be shy to virtually interrupt me. I'm happy to stop talking and address questions that come up. So please feel free to submit questions. So Becky, if you want to start with the first slide. Before we launch into the conversation, I just want to talk a little bit about the context of college essays and the role they play in the college admissions process to begin with, because I think there's not always accurate information about that out in the world. So college essays do, of course, matter. They don't matter the same amount at every school. They don't always carry the same weight. There are still a number of colleges and universities that don't practice as holistic a review. These tend to be bigger schools, state universities, maybe slightly less selective schools that are still a little bit more of a numbers game, that are using more of just the GPA and the test scores, and that's really how they're making decisions. And so schools like that don't weigh essays very heavily. In some cases, don't even have them at all. But a good example of a school like that is Penn State, a very popular school with a lot of our students. Their essay is optional. They're now in the Common App, so it's just the Common Application essay. And it's really not a big piece of the evaluation if they even get to it at all. By contrast, if you look at schools that are more selective or smaller, the essay can play a really critical role in the admissions process. That doesn't mean that the most fabulous essay on earth is going to take a C student and launch him into Harvard. But for students who are academically qualified and who have the extracurricular bona fides and the great teacher recommendations and all the pieces of the puzzle they need to have, the essay can really be something that pushes them over the edge. So they're really important. And I know they can be really daunting for a lot of students, but I would emphasize that, first of all, this is a great time to be thinking of them. For those of you who are rising seniors or parents of rising seniors, summer is a wonderful time to take advantage of to get a head start with essays. And also at a time of such tremendous uncertainty right now, when this landscape is changing seemingly by the minute. Just today, Columbia and Dartmouth went test optional. That was a really pretty big deal in the admissions landscape. And we're going to have maybe fewer data points than we usually do, or admissions officers will. There will be students applying test optional, other students who could only test once, other students with pass-fail courses and no grades for junior spring. These narrative pieces of the application, the teacher recommendations, the guidance counselor letter, and the essays are going to be more important than ever. They're really going to be looked at closely. So it's something we really want students to be thoughtful about and to give themselves a lot of time to work on, because if I can leave you with anything tonight, it's that writing is a process. It's going to take time, and it's really, really worth giving yourself a lot of time to work on that essay and let it breathe and go back to it and keep revising. You can go to the next slide, Becky. So when we're talking about the college essay, when people say, oh, what are you writing your college essay about? Usually we're talking about the Common Application essay. For most students, this will be sort of the main essay they write, their big essay. And most students start with this when they begin college essay work, partially because this is the most open-ended essay, in many cases the hardest to figure out because it's so open-ended, and also because the prompts are available now. We know that these are the questions for the 2020-2021 application cycle. They actually have not changed since last year. So students can start them early, whereas most supplemental essays, the additional essays that some colleges and universities recommend or require as part of their applications, typically come out when the Common App resets on August 1st. Some of those might trickle out over the summer. If you're on mailing lists of schools that you're interested in, sometimes they release those questions early, but you can expect a big dump of all the supplemental essays by August 1st. So it can be a great structure or way to structure your time to work on the Common Application essay earlier in the summer, so that then you can do another wave of supplements once they come out. These are the 7 prompts. You can see, if you look at them, again, very open-ended questions, including our favorite topic of your choice. A lot of students or parents think they shouldn't choose topic of your choice, that admissions officers really want them to choose a prompt. Absolutely, you can choose topic of your choice. It's there for a reason. It is, I believe, the second most popular prompt after number 5, the one about a new realization about yourself or new growth, sense of yourself and others. Number 1 is also very popular and used to sort of be the catch-all before they brought back topic of your choice. Students can really choose any of these prompts. It does not matter. Topic of your choice is absolutely fine. And in fact, I recommend that students typically not start this process by looking at the prompts and trying to brainstorm based on the prompts themselves. For a lot of students, that can really be limiting, and they end up trying to fit a square peg into a round hole or get fixated on the question itself. Like, oh, I don't have a problem I'd like to solve, or oh, I don't have a belief or idea I'd like to question. That's okay. You don't have to answer that question. You only have to pick one. But it can be frustrating to approach it that way and try to do it by process of elimination. It really inhibits imagination, I think. And so I highly recommend that rather than approaching it that way, students think first about what they want to say about themselves. And I guarantee you, no matter what that thing is, it's going to fit with one of these prompts, maybe even with a couple. And then you can choose and consider how the prompt might actually be a helpful framework for how to structure your essay. The Common Application essay is only 650 words, and that is a hard limit. You cannot submit with anything above that, not even a single word. A lot of students are surprised to learn that it is that short and relieved because they've built it up as some 10-page essay in their minds. For other students, that's a little scary. Brevity is not easy, and it's a tall order to fit so much about yourself into what is essentially 650 words single-spaced. But we always advise students to write long, write a lot. It is much easier to cut than it is to have to add detail. So for a lot of students, they may write 1,000 words, 1,500 words even in a first draft, and then over time, winnow that down to the 650 near the end of the process. That's totally normal. That can be a really great approach. Next slide, Becky. So next, I want to talk a little bit about what admissions officers are looking for in these essays, because there's also, I think, a lot of misinformation about that. You will notice that I have put writing above topic here, and that is intentional. I think we have a lot of emphasis on the idea of a topic, that there are certain topics that are sort of golden tickets. If only you can come up with the most creative topic or something unique that they've never seen before, that's really going to set you apart. And occasionally, yes, that can work, but for most students, that's not the right way to approach this. It really is much more about how you write this essay than what the actual topic is. And by the same token, there could be a topic that on paper sounds absolutely fascinating and amazing, but if it's not executed in the right way, it's going to fall flat. So I really want to emphasize some of these points that are more about style and voice and tone and structure over the topic itself, because almost any topic can work. So from the writing, there are a few things that we really want students to have. The number one thing is authentic voice. This is the most important piece of the college essay. The whole point of the essay in the application is to help admissions officers understand who the student is. And that means that they need to be able to picture a student actually writing this, be able to really imagine the person on the other side of it. So that means, first of all, that it really should sound like a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old wrote it. It shouldn't sound like an adult wrote it. So parents, when you are tempted to edit a sentence or a phrase because you know there's a way it could be more sophisticated or a better way to say it, please don't. You're actually doing the student a disservice by doing that. We really want it to sound like the student's voice. This can take a lot of adjusting for the students themselves because the way we teach English at most schools, we're really stamping out voice during middle school and high school. And I get a lot of first drafts that still have one instead of I as the subject in a lot of sentences because it can feel really inorganic to write that way. But I try to tell students, throw out everything you've learned about writing so far. This is different. It is a different style. It is much more informal in tone and in expression than an academic essay. You are, of course, using I. Contractions are totally fair game and in fact can help the writing feel more authentic and more informal in the way that it should. I often add them if a student is using a lot of cannot or would not in a way that feels a bit staid or inorganic. It's totally okay. We're not going to have, it's not so informal that students are going to be putting in like or things like that, but it is really pretty informal. For some students, a good way to access that kind of voice can even be to use dictation software or the notes app if they can dictate to it, something like that. If they're struggling with writing in a really formal way, that could be a way to free them up to capture a little bit more of the voice that we're looking for. On that same note about authentic voice, that really means being yourself. If you're not funny, that's okay. You don't have to be funny in your essay. If you don't have a really sophisticated vocabulary, please don't write your essay with the thesaurus sitting next to you. That's not going to help. It's going to make you sound like someone you're not, and it's probably not going to work. So that is the number one thing we try to preserve in this process is authentic voice. After that, they are really looking for, of course, clear, engaging writing. They want it to be organized. They want to be able to follow what you're doing. That's probably a no-brainer. I will say that the way that looks is a little bit different from what students might be used to doing in school. They can liberate themselves from the 5-paragraph essay. A college essay should not, in most cases, have a clear thesis statement in the opening paragraph, followed by 3 supporting points and a conclusion. In fact, that may be a little bit of a dry essay that may not really land in the way they want it to. There's no set number of paragraphs they have to use. They can have much shorter paragraphs than they use in school. And in fact, that can work really well as a technique. So there are a lot of ways they can structure it that are different from the writing they might be doing in school, as long as there is some structure. Admissions officers want a compelling story. We all know this. They read thousands and thousands and thousands of essays every year. They want it to be fun. They want it to be engaging. So we often tell students to think about the stories they can tell as an entry point into this. But of course, the story needs to say something about them, which we'll get to in a minute. Admissions officers are also looking for personal detail and specificity. They want this essay to feel like only you could have written it. So you might hear, if you've gone to a lot of info sessions led by admissions officers, you might hear them say things like, we want to know that you're the person who eats the marshmallows before the cereal in your Lucky Charms. They like to say things like that. And that's kind of a facetious example, but it's true. That's something that not everybody does. And if you read a detail that is that hyper specific, it really helps you imagine the person on the other side. This is also something that can be really hard and may take a number of revisions of getting more and more specific and continuing to zoom in so that your story really pops. So that's on the writing side. When it comes to the topic, admissions officers, at the end of the day, they want to learn something about you from this essay. There is no right answer of what that thing is, but I would encourage all students to think strategically about the other pieces of their application. They're going to know that you're hardworking, that you're smart, that you're dedicated, that you're diligent. All of those things are going to come through in your transcript, probably in your teacher recommendations. What are things about you that are not otherwise going to come through in your application? Is it your creativity? Is it a different angle of your intellectual curiosity? Is it your commitment to your community? Is it how much you love your family? Is it how much you love learning about other cultures? It can be anything. There is no right answer. We just want it to show one of those things about you by the end of the essay, because it ultimately, what they're doing with this essay is trying to figure out who you'll be as a member of their community. They know from looking at your transcript that you can do the work. They know from your teacher recommendations who you'll be in the classroom. This is their chance to figure out, are you going to be a good roommate? And if that's the feeling that you've left an admissions officer with after they've read your essay, wow, I can really see this student thriving in our community. I can see the student being a great roommate. You've done a good job and you've done it exactly right. Becky, next slide. Please, thank you. So all that said, how do students do this? Where do they start? We highly recommend all students start with a full brainstorm. This can take a long time. If they're meeting with a coach or working on their own, it might take an hour and a half, 2 hours. This is some heavy lifting of introspection, and we recommend doing that at the front end of the process. And it's really worthwhile to take a long time to think about all the different aspects of a student's life, as I said, because even if some of those things don't end up being their common application topic, they're likely going to write a lot of supplements, and then they have those other things that are important to them handy already and can think about what other aspects of themselves they haven't yet been able to represent when it comes time to write those supplements. So as a first step, when a student sits down to brainstorm, I recommend thinking about, what do you love? What are you interested in? What are the things you care about? List all those things. It could be 2 things, it could be 10 things. Every student is different. Once a student has done that, we encourage them to think about specific stories or moments that they can describe really well. So as we talked about a little bit, many of the best essays really read like stories. That's what's compelling. It feels almost like a short story more than an essay in some cases. That doesn't mean that the most dramatic thing that has ever happened to you will necessarily be a good essay topic. Sometimes things that are really, really great stories for a dinner party don't actually tell me anything about you as a person. So that's a really important thing to think about. We want to find that intersection between stories or moments that are easy to describe or lend themselves to description, and something that in the end reveals something about who you are. Which of these stories are going to show me something and make me learn something about who you are as a person? So that's the first step. I recommend doing this over the summer, as I said. I think in an ideal world, every student would have their common application essay, at least, in really, really great shape by the time they go back to school. This year, so much is topsy-turvy and upside down that students may benefit from doing even more essay work over the summer than they might normally do, because I think in a lot of cases, students might still be testing in the fall. They may still be they may have to refocus on academics after a term of not having grades, and colleges are going to be looking at senior fall grades really closely. So use this summertime really well if you can. Use as much time as you can to work on essays. That said, not every student's going to be ready today or tomorrow or even in the next couple of weeks to work on essays yet. This is, as I said, a heavy lift of introspection. I think a lot of students might not be in the headspace to do that right now. That is totally fine. Even starting end of July, beginning of August is still a really, really big head start. So if you're that student, please give yourself permission to take a little bit of a break before you launch into this. Becky, could you bring us to the next slide, please? Thank you. So just a few final do's and don'ts. We have a couple blog posts about this on our college essay hub that we're calling it, but just a couple final points on the common application essay, principles that apply to all essays really. Do show rather than tell. You have all probably heard this quite a lot. That means don't tell us that you're intellectually curious. Show us by describing the textbooks you stay up reading until 3 a.m, or the conference you went to and all the things that excited you that you learned about there, rather than just stating it. The more you approach it in a storytelling fashion, the more impact it will typically have. Some students take this too far. It's okay to tell sometimes. And an expression an essay coach of ours recently said that I loved was, show and earn the right to tell. So it's okay if by the end of your essay, you have to tell us some things. Some things come out better in that direct fashion. Earn it. Give us some story. Give us something that grips us before you get to that place. Start early, as I said, that's a big do. Seek feedback. That is absolutely a worthwhile thing for students to do in this process. I would caution students to limit how many people they seek feedback from. If you show an essay to 16 people, you're probably going to get 16 different responses. That's normal. Everyone has a different reaction to different writing. It's subjective, but that can be really confusing, and it can be hard to figure out your own ideas and your own voice when you have that many voices chiming in and weighing in on what you're writing. So I encourage all students to share their essays with, could be with an admissions or essay coach, could be with their English teacher, their college counselor at school, their parents. Even that might be too long a list. 1 or 2 people, maybe 3. I wouldn't do more than that, because it really can get hard to filter all the different perspectives. In the don't category, don't try to fit in too much. The best essays are really pretty focused and are talking about only 1 or maybe 2 things. You do not need to use this space to rehash everything in your resume. We know that. They're going to know that from other pieces of your application. And you can't possibly fit every wonderful thing about yourself into 650 words. So don't try. It's okay. Just do one thing really well. And then finally, don't over edit. It's really hard to let go. I think that's one of the hardest things for students, is to say, okay, I think this is the best it's going to be. I feel really proud of it. I'm going to let it go. I would advise all students to give themselves a week or 2 of a break, particularly from the Common Application essay. If you're starting it in the summer, you might do 5 revisions before school starts if you're really motivated and doing a lot. Give yourself 2 weeks off from looking at that essay. You don't want to get in the place where you are reading it again and again and editing 1 word, because you're not going to be able to see the forest for the trees anymore. So give yourself time and permission to step back, to avoid nitpicking and not having perspective on your own writing anymore. Okay, so we started late, so I have more time. What about COVID-19? We got a lot of questions about this. I think when a lot of you submitted questions about how to write about the coronavirus era in your applications, this new question that the Common Application just released had not yet come out. So we do have some more clarity now on how this might play a role in students' applications this year. On essentially every admissions event or webinar I've sat in on in the past couple of months, admissions officers expressed fear and concern about everyone writing their essays about this, understandably, and just the fatigue they anticipated feeling reading these essays again and again, but also, more important, their fear that they wouldn't be able to learn all the things they usually want to learn about students, because students would feel that they needed to use the space to write about all the things that are happening to them and make sure admissions officers know. So the Common App created a new question. This is on the Common App, so every student will have the option of replying to this. It is optional. You don't have to answer. But if you choose to, this is a dedicated space to explain COVID-19 related interruptions. Most students should use this space to talk about anything COVID related. There may be rare occasions when a student might want to write their whole personal statement about it, especially if the student has taken a lot of actions as a result of COVID-19 in their community or in their extracurricular lives or in some way. But if a student really just wants to give context about, here's what's happening in my educational life, Here are my testing opportunities and how they've been limited. Students who took the AP and maybe it didn't go through and they didn't get a score. All of those kinds of things. Students' learning environments, living in an apartment with younger siblings running around, which keep them from focusing. This is the place for that. So most students should use this space, and then that frees them up to still write their personal statement about the same things they usually would, and to really have a space to write about the positive things about themselves and not have to focus on this really incredibly challenging time that they are all going through. Next slide, Becky. So as a final point, I want to talk a little bit about supplemental essays. Some schools actually care about these even more than they care about the Common App essay. And I think sometimes students spend so much energy on the Common App essay that they don't leave enough time or energy for the supplemental essays. Don't let that happen to you. These are just as important, sometimes more. So it can be really great to take that pause from the Common App essay and give yourself a really solid amount of time to work on the supplemental essays, which again will come out around August 1st in most cases. The classic supplemental essay is why us? Why do you want to go here? Someone wrote in the question, how do you possibly stand out in an essay like this? I wouldn't think so much about standing out. Standing out, it's hard to be unique in a why do you want to go here essay. That's okay. What is important is to really, really sell the fit between you and this institution. And to do that, a student has to do a lot of research. Even if they have visited the school, even if they have a sibling or a parent who went to the school, the student is going to have to do a deep dive on that website. And it is tedious and it can take a lot of time, but it is worth it because it really matters in writing these essays. They want to know that you have an understanding, not just of their teams and the sense of school spirit and the fact that they have great academics and their teacher to student ratio and anything else you could have found in the landing page. They want to know that you understand their curriculum, the way they structure that. They want to know that you understand the offerings of the major that you want to study, and you've looked at what classes they offer or what professors are doing research that really excites you, or what internship programs might be unique to the things you want to study. They want to see that you've put in the time because ultimately this is one of the ways you are demonstrating interest in that school, which is something a lot of schools care about. And they really want to know that you're a fit for them. That means that part of this essay needs to be devoted to you and who you are and what your needs are. For a lot of students, this is the place where they get to really articulate their own academic and general collegiate goals. This is the place to do that. And so it's kind of a marriage of the two, of here's who I am and here's what I want. And then, oh, look at that, that's perfect. You have all of that, and here are all the ways I'm going to explore that on your campus. One final piece of advice there, pay attention to the prompt. A lot of students think that once they've written a great YS essay, they can just copy and paste them into different schools. Probably every school you've heard in an info session has also said, make sure to change the name. I mean, make sure to change the name. Do that. Rookie mistake. But beyond that, pay attention to the actual language of the prompt because it varies more than it may appear on the surface. And it's really important that students, even while maybe recycling things in that YS essay, because presumably the things they want from schools aren't changing too much, they need to make sure to be tailoring it to what the school is asking, because it does vary quite a bit. Someone asked, is it bad to repeat some things from your essay in the supplements? I wouldn't do it. I would really think of these as new opportunities. Every essay is a new opportunity to show something else about yourself. There may occasionally be times when something you write about in a supplement overlaps with your Common App personal statement. For example, if you're a ballet dancer and you write your personal statement about something involving ballet, and then University of Michigan asks you for the 150 word, what activity is most important to you and would you want to continue? You don't have to write about something else for that. You can still write about ballet if that's really your most important activity. But in general, I would really try to diversify. This is a chance to show all the different puzzle pieces of who you are. So to that end, the second point here, for all those other supplemental questions that you'll have to write, the more fun ones, like what's your favorite word and why at UVA, or Tufts doesn't have it anymore, but celebrate your nerdy side, things like that. Go back to your original brainstorm from the Common Application essay. What are those other pieces of your life that you didn't end up using your Common App essay for, that admissions officers still don't know, that you could tell them? How could you use this space? It really is all a big puzzle. And this year, that COVID-19 piece is just an extra part of that puzzle that will not really necessarily impact your supplements and your Common App essay, but can give you the freedom to breathe, knowing that they're going to have the context they need, and you can approach these other essays the same way you always would. I think that's everything I was going to cover. I managed to do it in 30 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I know this is a lot of information. Again, these essays should be fun. They can be fun, I should say. They can be fun, or at least don't have to be miserable. And at the end of the day, give yourselves time. Start earlier than you think, but give yourselves a break before you start. You will all write fabulous essays. Everyone is capable of doing it, as long as they give time and space for revision and seek some feedback when appropriate. So thanks so much for joining us. If you are interested in help with your essays, please reach out. We are happy to help. And everyone, be well, take care, and we will see you soon.